Chapter 2 Moonblood. As the red eye of the sun dipped towards the horizon, Selina drifted back to her father's house like a phantom on a sea of pain. It was not her home, only the place where she rested her head at night. There was no home for an outcast like her. She felt the eyes of her village upon her body, appalled by her behavior, scandalized at the fact that she was wearing pants. Crafted by her own hands out of the deer hide from her second kill, they were much easier to get around in than those useless dresses. Of course, it did not matter that she now dressed like a man and moved like a man. Breasts and a voice without gravel still meant she could not own property or have any say in her future. Even if she was to leave her village, the wilderness was more dangerous for a woman than a man. Men did not bleed once a month, attracting predators. Men did not have to carry around the cradle of life that could breed disease as well as children. Men did not have to worry about being attacked and violated by every stranger they encountered on their travels. Men did not need to worry about a lot of things, but these reasons were beginning to matter less and less as time wore on. The doe's hide went onto a training rack Selina had built when she started hunting 3 years back. She cleaned and prepared it properly, letting the body move to the task as her mind remained elsewhere. She needed to be rid of this place. It was no home she could be proud of, here with these people who laughed and tried to push her into a role she could never fill. Selina? She hated that voice. It was so soft, soothing, and weak. Musical in nature, yet quiet enough to be drowned out should someone choose to talk over her. Are you all right? Do I look all right? She felt like a fool speaking in such a way to the angel with the strawberry blonde hair, but she did not know how to be civilized to her eldest sister and her delicate ways. You look sad, Melissa almost whispered as she approached to a comfortable distance, staying just outside of the hunter's workspace. Idiot, Selina said, mostly to herself, but it struck her sister nonetheless. I'm angry, not sad. Oh, I'm sorry. She was so easily hurt. It was like playing tag with flowers. You know, Bella's a really nice woman. I think if you get to know her, you might... Melly? Selina used her sister's nickname, but her voice was still angry. I know you mean well, but I don't want to know her. I don't need a mother. I don't need any of this. Right now, I just want to be angry and alone. She felt sick as she uttered these last words. Angry and alone described her most days. She hated the feeling, yet held it close to her heart. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry! Selina stopped, swallowed, and controlled her voice, bringing it down to a normal level once more. Please, just go home. I'm sure Eric misses his mother right now. She turned her back on her sister and continued to work on the hide. She had never known her mother, but she was certain if she had, she would be missing her right now too. Instead, there was only the ache in her shoulders, the extra wide ones that had gotten stuck, broad bones that would not fit. It's not your fault, her sister's voice said as if reading her mind. Lightning crackled through Selina's skull. Her whole body tensed, and she felt as if all of the emotion of 17 years was about to burst forth in a deadly rush. What? She growled in warning, but her sister pressed on. It's not your fault. Mother didn't want you to die. She begged them to cut her. She told them to. How would you know? Selina was drowning in her sorrow. Sweat and tears flooded to the surface in an effort to run freely. I was there, Melissa said as her eyes traveled in the direction of a painful memory. I remember the screaming. She grabbed Papa and screamed, told him to cut her. She begged him to save you. Don't! Don't! She gave her life for yours, Melissa began to shout. She named you, and then she died! Shut up! The world was horrible, forcing her into a life she did not want, constantly reminding her of its bloody cost. The guilt and pain were too great. She wished to be rid of them, fists clenched and her body shook with grief. She punched the tanning post, but was only successful in hurting her hand. Physical pain was different, and she welcomed the distraction. Again she struck, and again. Agony cascaded through her hands and arms, overwhelming the ache in her heart and shoulders. The skin on her knuckles split, causing blood to glisten in the light of the rising moon. Casting her eyes to the sky, she looked directly into Luna's gaze. something that was forbidden for fear that it would drive a person mad. Luna understood her. Lighting the night, yet unappreciated for her efforts, feared by all and trusted by none, only the moon goddess knew the secrets of those who traveled in the night. She kept them to herself, never betraying those who acted when they thought no one else could see. Selina looked away and saw she was alone. No matter how cruel she was to her sister, Melissa forever thought of others first. She had stepped away, leaving Selina alone to cry in peace. Falling to her knees, the youngest sister sobbed quietly. Large tears replaced the noise she wished to project into the night. Everyone else was inside, too afraid to venture out into the dark. The knowing Moon Mother watched silently through her half-lidded eye, caressing the young mortal with gentle beams of understanding, letting her be herself without drawing disapproving stares. Eventually the raging emotions abated, leaving only a dreadful empty feeling that ached without remorse. The music of a single wolf sang into the silence, a note of joy thanking her for the deer she had left. A wish crossed her heart, of running away to the world of her blue-eyed wolf, alone on all fours, with the wind in her face and the music in her voice. A terrible tightness clenched her chest, pulling her back to her feet. Bloody hands moved back to the task of preparing the hide. Once finished, she washed in a small bowl, wrapped her split knuckles, and headed inside. Father sat in front of the fire, absently poking it with a stick. Selina moved past him to her room. It was simple, sparse, and the only bit of safety she knew. She removed her pants, tucked herself into her bedroll, and faded off into a slumber so restless it was almost like not sleeping at all. Sweat, heat, fever in the night. A belly so full of sickening bile it moves on its own. Leaning back, the men are pushed away. Sisters from every corner stare, chewing their lips. Eyes violating the most personal parts of the body. "Push!" orders the largest and ugliest of all people. Gnarled hands grasp at her, hold her down. "Push!" I can't. I'm stuck." The body struggles against its nature, wider and wider until it can stretch no more. Screams and blood wash over the spectators as they stand in mute helplessness. Men go to war, women go to labor. "Push! Push, child! Try harder!" "I'm trying. She won't fit." "Shoulders hurt. Too wide. I can't get out. Save me. Get a knife. We must save her." "No! No!" Selina woke from the dream with a scream. Her body was covered in sweat and her breath was heavy and fast. Heavy footsteps burst into the room. "Selina! What is it? Are you hurt?" Her father's voice would have been comforting any other time, but this moment it was intruding where it should not. "Get out!" Her voice screamed without her permission, forcing him to fall back around the corner. Painfully she hugged her knees to her chest. Her legs were large now. Muscle made them thick and meat made them strong. The body reminded her of this strength, but the wetness of her blankets was matched only by the ache in her stomach. No, not her stomach. Lower. An annoyed hand dipped between her legs, feeling wet folds. The darkness on her fingers had an acrid smell. Her moon blood had come early, and it flowed bitterly. Selina sorted through her belongings and withdrew a small bit of clean cloth she had threaded in anticipation of this event. She wiped the area, then placed the bundle where it needed to be. Climbing out of her covers, a familiar ache pulsed through her torso. Vermin and predators would come unless she blotted up the blood, and she was an able enough hunter to know better. Moonblood would make a mess of her prized pants, so she slipped into a skirt. In a moment she was in the kitchen, placing a pot of water over the fire. Rags went in and she began the process of watching a pot boil. A wave of pain kicked her in the stomach and bent her over the counter. Curses rang loudly, followed by heavy breathing as she tried to regain her senses. There was a tickling sensation traveling down her leg. A frustrated gasp slipped out as she lifted her skirt and saw a single crimson drop was making a break for the floor. "You all right?" Her father's voice startled her and she whirled on him. The look on her face gave him pause, but he did not retreat this time. "It's my bleeding time," she told him, knowing he really did not want to know more. "It's early, and it hurts." "Oh," he said with that uncomfortable sound to his voice most men get in such situations. Is, that bad? Maybe, Selina said as she stared at the water that was beginning to steam but was not yet ready. Well, is there anything I can do? Another wave of pain caused her to lean forward and brace herself. This was not normal. Her moon blood was generally merciful and manageable, but not tonight. Fate had cursed her again, forcing her to endure this instead of being in bed where she wanted to return. Again she was reminded of the weakness in being a woman. Looks like the day's been rough on you, her father said as he added a log to the fire. Raising 3 daughters alone had taught him a thing or 3 about this. Bruto's going to be here in the morning. I doubt he'll understand this. I should tell him to come back next week. Selina tried not to look at him. It was not yet time for her to stop being angry with him, and this kindness, though not uncommon, was hampering her efforts. I should go see Asagi, she said after the silence had grown too uncomfortable. Does it hurt that much? Though she hated to admit it, she nodded. It's difficult to wake at such an hour when your bones get old. You should bring her some of that crushed deer antler she likes so much. Selina did not respond as he stepped out into the night. There was an apology in his kindness, but she was not yet ready to forgive him. She wanted to believe this was all his fault. The rules, the marriage, but it was his way. She loved him. She hated him. She loved him. Pain pulsed piteously. It was impossible to reason past it. It should not hurt this much. Without thinking, she plucked a hot rag from the steaming water. It was not yet boiling, but it would have to do. She gave it a shake, wrung it out, and used it to clean her skin. Then she took another rag, wrung it out, and began waiting for it to dry. Selina's father came in with a small pouch. This should do it. Can you manage on your own? Setting her teeth, she nodded ferociously. Pride worked its way into a smile on her lips. He touched her hair, kissed her head, and returned to bed. Damn him! Though she hated being referred to as a child, the nickname stripped the rage from her when she needed it. A boulder turned in her gut, grinding against her insides. Selina shook her head and gathered what she would need. 1 moist rag, 1 pouch of deer antler, a warm cloak to keep the cold and sickness away, and finally, her hatchet. The men would not teach her to use a sword, but an axe needed little skill. She felt its heft and was comforted by its weight. The skirt held no belt, so she carried her belongings as she stepped out into the moonlight. Awkwardly, she struggled toward the outskirts of town. The journey of a mile was normally an easy affair, but her stride was cut by the limits of her dress and her body's silent rebellion. When at last the smell of herbs greeted her, she could already feel her pain abating. It was as if the very air itself healed those who came to Asagi's hut. Though a witch for sure, she was the type of witch the village could not live without. A dog barked, causing Selina to smile. A tall, muscular shepherd's hound leaped out the window and bounded towards her. Courage! Selina called as she went to her knees, dropped her belongings into a pile, and clapped twice. The fierce animal's snarl melted into a playful woof as he rushed to her. She braced for impact, but he knocked her down anyway. The powerful animal straddled her and covered her face with slobbery dog kisses. Okay, she laughed. I love you too, you dumb mutt. She scratched his face vigorously, then let go, and he bounded off. By the time Selina collected her things and returned to her feet, a willowy shadow was standing in the doorway. Each time she came here, she felt as if she would enter only to find her old mentor dead with age. Everyone else had left her, and elders were always here one moment, then gone the next. But like every time before, the door had opened, and long white hair shone silver in the moonlight. "Late night, young Scarlet?" the old woman asked with kindly affection in her voice. "Good evening, Baba," Selina said as one of her few childhood comforts smiled at her. "What troubles you?" the old woman asked with grandmotherly concern. "Sorry, Baba, but I'm bleeding. A lot." "Oh dear," the old woman said, and ushered her inside. Courage took up one of his rope toys and thrashed it back and forth to make sure it was good and dead. Then he brought this to his guest and dropped it at her feet. "Sorry, boy," she said with a sad smile. "You finally fractured?" Asagi asked in her maddening tone of mysterious knowing. "I've been burdened." "It's a challenging time," the old woman said with a nod as she put the kettle on. A strain thins the wilderness raw, as if claws rent it bare. Selina marveled at the way Asagi spoke. Even at this early hour she could move through her abode, opening jars and smelling their contents, and still talk in riddles. Have you seen your fate yet? Not since the announcement. The bride-to-be winced, though she could not tell if it was from the thought of marrying Bruto or the pain this night had brought her. A wrinkled hand sprinkled bits of bark and yarrow into the kettle. Selina's nose wrinkled in anticipation of the bitter taste she was about to endure. Is that for me? A withered hand motioned towards the piece of damp cloth in Selina's hand. No, it's for me. She put the pouch of crushed deer antler on the table. This is for you. Thank you, child. Did you boil the cloth? Of course. A knowing eye pierced her. Well, it was very hot. I didn't have time. Let's put it in the rag pile for good measure, Asagi said, knowing better than to take a chance with a dirty rag in such a sensitive place. Go to my red bag, dear. Selina was grateful as she exchanged the saturated cloth for a clean one. Has the land spoken to you? Yeah, it says run. Run where? It doesn't say where, it just says run. Asagi stared at the kettle, but she was obviously thinking. You can track a deer through the woods, but not a trail for you to walk? It seems you are not seeing all the signs. What do I do? Selina would only ever ask her Baba something like this. No one else was allowed to see her so uncertain. The most obvious answers are often the hardest for us to see. Selina waited for more, but did not get another word until a soft whistle announced a boil from the kettle. A moment later, Selina took the cup and sipped. Thankfully, it was too hot to taste, and it had not yet steeped long enough to be too horrible. The second cup would be much stronger. Do you know why we call you Scarlet? Selina blinked at the question. Because of my freckles and red hair? Passion, Asagi announced. Your fire fills your face, heats your temper, and boils through your voice. You were always a passionate child, like a wolf. You can be imprisoned, but never tamed. Your soul sings with the need to be out in the world. Perhaps you should listen. But I can't travel. Because of your moon blood? Yes! Selina almost screamed. If I bleed in the woods, the bears and wolves will find me. Or worse, the rot. What would I do then? Garlic. Asagi spoke casually as she sipped at her own tea. Fear is a friend when it keeps you safe, but you should not let it freeze your feet in place. It is better to move in the wrong direction than to drift listlessly or not at all. Many times we find the right path while traveling the wrong one. Silence fell between them as Selina considered this wisdom. The elder snatched her cup and poured the weak tea into the fire. Stronger tea replaced it and was handed back to the cramping girl. Cramp bark tea. The worse it tastes, the better it works. A sip said it would make her well enough to perform complicated acrobatics or march for days. Have you noticed the quiet in the forest? Selina's eyesight finally cleared. A mouth like cotton tried to respond. Yes, I wonder why. A bitter pause. Selina swallowed several times before responding again. Maybe someone should go out there and find out. Maybe, the old woman said with a nod. It is difficult for these old bones to collect things. You could get me more Klamath weed while you search. Or maybe you could go get some Klamath weed and search for other things while you run your errand. Should I talk to your father? That, wince of pain, might be a good idea. Perhaps we should sleep on it. Perhaps. Finish your tea, dear.